I want to start by setting the table for just a minute regarding, it's going to sound odd to some of you, the uncertain nature of God. It's a bit of an unsettling thought, but before I explain what I'm saying, let me explain what I am not saying. What I am saying is that following God involves some uncertainty. I'm not saying he's unknowable. I'm not saying he's unfaithful or that he's unreliable. I am saying that he is unpredictable in the fact that you cannot reduce him to an equation. The people who get off track the quickest are the ones who are convinced they have him all figured out. Have you ever been told something that made no sense in the moment and later it made perfect sense? Remember your dad would say things like, "This isn't to punish you, it's to protect you." And it felt suspiciously like punishment at the time. But later, when your friends went down a path you didn't go, you realized that really was for my protection. I didn't understand it when he said it, but I understand it now. That tell them now and they'll understand later mode is often the communication of God. And we see it all the way through Scripture. God often speaks to people who don't understand it, and later they understand it. In the book of Job, Job admits to God, "I've said things about you that I'm not even sure of." He says, the actual text is, "Surely I spoke of things I did not understand." It's like, I've repeated back what I know about you and I don't fully get it. Isaiah hears from God, and God tells Isaiah, "My thoughts are not your thoughts." It's like, there's going to be some communication here that is foggy that will get clearer later. In Daniel 12, an angel is speaking the word of the Lord to Daniel and literally tells Daniel, "Shut the book. I know you're writing this down, but shut the book and we will reopen it later and it will become clear." And some of you go, "Well, that's Old Testament, but now we have Jesus and everything's crystal clear." Now that we've got Jesus, all that's taken care of. Yet Paul told the Romans, we don't even know what to pray for. It's like, you think you're following so closely, you're still not quite sure what to pray for. Later he told the Corinthians, "You see through a glass darkly." You've got an idea, but it's not as clear as you wish it was. He told the same people in a later letter, he said, "We walk by faith, not by sight." So there still is that element of not fully understanding everything the Lord speaks, even though we know it's him saying it. And the pride that comes around this idea of hearing God clearly and standing on a promise often collides with the human condition that we don't get perfect clarity and life can be more of a mystery than we are comfortable for. Now, if I were to ask you privately, are you doing what you thought you would be doing with the people you thought you would be doing it with in the place where you thought you would be doing it as recently as 5 years ago? My guess is very few people could say yes to all three of those. You're lucky if you get two, because life is unpredictable. Now, how we got to all this, and I am going to read the Bible at some point this morning, I promise you. But how we got to all this, let me let you on a secret. Pastors are notorious for comparing themselves to other pastors. I know we shouldn't, we do. Almost everybody does it in any vocation. The plumber, when you have a plumber come to your house and you show him the problem, what's the first words he says? "Who did this work?" Like, it's the first thing out of his mouth. He's trying to figure out, like, all right, who messed this up? Because I surely can do this better. And one thing that pastors compare themselves to other pastors about is not just how they teach, but how they prepare. And there are as many ways to prepare for a message and prepare notes as there are pastors. I published my notes online a while back, and I had another pastor who I've only met one time reached out to me and said, "How many weeks are you going to preach on that?" It's like, that was one set of notes. That's 1 week. Some pastors create teaching schedules a year in advance. And I admire that in the sense that I admire people who ride a unicycle. Cool, not going to try. Okay, it's not how I operate. And I felt bad about that for a long time, until I heard Craig Groeschel on a podcast. If you're not familiar with Craig Groeschel, he's from Life Church. He started in 1996 in his garage. Now they've got like 45 campuses. That's a real number. 80,000 people on Sunday mornings. And so the guy is clearly busy, and he's clearly a talented administrative guy and a talented planner. And somebody asked him on this podcast, how do you chart out your teaching for the year? And he said, for the year? He said, when I finish one series, I hope to know what the next one is. I was so comforted by that. So now I say, as Craig Rochelle and I say, when I finish one series, I kind of have an idea where we're going for the next one. It's not that I pull a topic out of the air. Usually it's some combination of either rhythm. If we've been in the Old Testament, we go to the New. If we've been in the New for a while, we'll go to the Old. Sometimes it's a response to a particular situation or development that we want to address. Sometimes it's basic Bible knowledge, and we haven't really touched that. But once in a while, it really is very specifically what the Lord is personally speaking to me, and I'm so affected by it that I want to share it with my friends. And that is really where we are in this series in Ecclesiastes. My Bible reading led me to Ecclesiastes maybe 2 weeks ago. And it's a book that can feel so melancholy and so contradictory at times. It's like Proverbs. You can find it saying one thing here and one thing. How do those two go together? You know, I was sharing with the men's prayer meeting on Monday. And in chapter 4, it says, I declared the dead are happier than the living. And then in chapter 9, it says, a living dog is better than a dead lion. It's like, what am I supposed to do with these two things, let alone how do I put them together? But in reading the book as a whole, rather than just the occasional verse that we try and apply, I started to extremely identify with some of the discomfort in Ecclesiastes, particularly the discomfort I have felt with the passage of time and how little I feel I have achieved, or what I have achieved has not satisfied me. And that ache of feeling like there's got to be more here. When I turned 50, I told Kelsey I wanted a birthday party, which shocked her. Because of all the things I've wanted, a birthday party has never been on the list. But it was an interesting time for us. It was a milestone. We were stepping into a new area of ministry. We were in a new house. And it felt like an opportunity to celebrate, like turning the page. So we threw a big party with everyone who was very important to me. And if I asked you to raise your hands if you were at that party, I don't know if any of you were. Because life shifted so much. Thought it was going this way, and it went this way. It's complicated, and it's uncomfortable, but it's life. So after spending the morning reading Ecclesiastes, I was thinking about that day 9 years ago, thought about how much happened in the way of achievement that just dissipated like fog. How many relationships did that? How many difficult situations had erupted? And I'm not saying this to inspire any kind of compassion. I'm telling you this to understand, because it's not an uncommon perspective to look back over 5, 6, 7, 9 years and go, that didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. So then you ask the question, are the years between then and now, are they wasted, or did they matter? They mattered immensely. They just didn't matter in the way you anticipated they were going to matter, or to the people that you thought they would matter. What we do in life rarely matters in the way we expect that it will. We affect people that we did not know we were going to affect, and we sometimes look back and think, I have no effect on the people that I thought I was going to have an effect on. If you're 15 or you're 50 or you're 100, you ask the question, does what I'm doing matter right now? Does the job I'm doing, does the meals I'm preparing, does the care that I put in matter or not? Or am I going to look back at this season and feel good or bad or bewildered? Some of you have very public roles, and you are in front of people, and sometimes you wonder, is this worth the hassle? Is serving this way, is it worth it, being in front of people? Others of you lead very hidden roles, and you wonder, is my work behind the scenes, is it ever going to matter? Can I endure being invisible for another 5, 10 years? The book of Ecclesiastes opens with this sort of thinking as he describes what I can only call the big problem of life, the part that just does not make sense. And in remarkably clear terms, he describes it. And I hope, like me, you're going to find yourself in this book as we go through it over the next coming weeks. So this morning, I want to start a journey through this book, an examination of our personal lives and how we are with where we are. Today, I hope to get through the big ideas of chapters 1 and 2, where he describes the big problem and then goes on to the first of many solutions that do not work. Now, we're going to start slowly. But have faith. We're not going to take every verse by verse. We are going to start very, very slowly, and hopefully we'll speed up over time. Starting out with Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 1. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Press pause. Who is the preacher here? Who's the person that is talking? Throughout the book, the writer of the book refers to himself as the preacher. Historically, it has been assumed that this is Solomon because he checks all of the boxes that are obvious. He is David's son. He was the king in Jerusalem. And the book describes the man with characteristics that are also used to describe Solomon. If you look at Ecclesiastes 1:16, it says, I communed with my heart, saying, look, I have attained greatness, and I have gained more wisdom than all who were before me in Jerusalem. My heart has understood great wisdom and knowledge. If we look at the record of Solomon's life, in 1 Kings 4:29 and 30, it says, and God gave Solomon wisdom and exceedingly great understanding and largeness of heart like the sand of the seashore. Thus Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the men in the east and all the wisdom of Egypt. So some would say, well, maybe it's not really Solomon. Maybe it's a man like Solomon. But whatever the case, I mean, walks like a duck, talks like a duck, chances are it's not a pigeon. It's probably Solomon. If it's not Solomon, it's someone with his sort of life's breath and experience. This is not somebody who's down on his luck. This is not somebody with nothing to offer. This is not somebody whose advice we would not take. This is a man with a lot of experience, with a lot of skill, with a lot of wisdom, and a lot of success. He is someone that you would hope to be. If you could switch places with people, you would probably want to switch places with the person in Ecclesiastes who calls himself the preacher. And let me say, just a sidebar, it is the most natural and unhelpful thing in the world to look at someone else's life and say, I would rather be them than me. It's natural. We all do it. But we have fallen into the delusion of thinking that if something is natural, it's good for us, right? Go to the grocery store, it says natural. Grizzly bears are natural. You don't invite them into your tent. Must be good for you. You know, there are things that are natural in our character that are not good for us, and comparison is one of those things. So why is it not helpful? Well, first of all, it's always entirely hypothetical. It can never really happen. Your life is not Freaky Friday. You're not going to change places with somebody. You are who you are. So to wish you were somebody else is just hypothetical. Second of all, you don't know their whole story. There very well are maybe circumstances in their life that you don't perceive, and you wouldn't want to touch those for $1,000. You wouldn't want to swap places with them in that situation. You're thinking, oh, no, what I see looks great, as if everyone airs all of their dirty laundry in public. So the preacher in Ecclesiastes, who on the surface is someone that we would all like to be, starts to reveal the secrets of his heart. And we come to the shocking realization that this character, whether it's Solomon or somebody like him, who has the best of everything and the capability to do anything he wants, and unlimited finances and unlimited knowledge, has some of the same aches of the heart that we do. He is as disappointed and as disillusioned with all that he has as we are with what little or as much as we have. You have more in common with your heroes than you realize, because they hurt too. Even when their lives look perfect in a little perfect square on Instagram. You know, you can't learn anything from anybody about social media because they are choosing what they show you. Okay? So you're looking at Instagram snippets of people and going, I'd like to change life. You can't learn anything from people's Instagram. What you can learn from is their search history. Like, let's go into what they're looking into. You can learn a ton more. Some of you would be happy to share your Instagram. Oh, your search history? No. So we look here into Solomon's search history, and he reveals the aches of his heart and what he's really looking for. Verse 2, he says, vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Now, it's super important to understand here, when he says vanity, it's not exactly like we use the word. He's not talking about being over interested in his physical appearance or his reputation. You know, some of you are old enough to remember Carly Simon wrote a song about Mick Jagger that said, "You're so vain, I bet you think the song is about you." You know, this is not the way he's using the word vain. Everybody under 40 is going, Carly Simon. We'll find, just look it up later, okay? I'm going to be 59. But it's this idea of being so full of yourself or vanity. That's not how he's using it. The word vanity comes from the Hebrew language and the word hevel, which literally means breath or vapor or mist or smoke. He's saying life is like a mist. It's like a vapor. It's like the word smoke. It's real. I can see it, but it's hard to capture or get your hands around. Have you ever tried to grab smoke? It seems impossible. When Ecclesiastes thinks vanity, think smoke, not mirrors. Because he's not talking about how you look at yourself as a reflection. He's saying how we regard our life. If you look back over the long or short period that you have lived, if you were honest, it's gone like smoke. It's disappeared. You had plans, you had priorities, and even the ones that you achieved went by a little fast. And you start talking to people who are older than you, and universally they will tell you, it went by quicker than I thought it would. The biggest joke of the American dream is our fervent belief that one day things will slow down. Those of you who are laughing know it is not true. When you're a child, you wonder, will you ever be an adult? But you ask any adult who's 30, 50, or 100, they were a child yesterday. Every elderly person you will ever meet will tell you, this came so much more quickly than I imagined. So when the preacher of Ecclesiastes says, it's all smoke, he goes on to describe the fragility in humanity in comparison with the earth itself. Pop science would tell you that humanity is resilient, but the environment and earth is fragile. And we're probably going to destroy it, probably in the next 2 weeks. But Solomon tells us exactly the opposite. He tells us in verses 3 and 4, what profiteth a man from his labor in which he toils under the sun? One generation passes away, another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. In other words, as hard as we work, and as long as we work, we only work so long, and it only lasts so long. There is an expiration date on us, and it surprises almost everybody, no matter how late that date is. It seems to come more quickly than we imagine. And the labor that we do blesses us until it doesn't. And it doesn't matter anymore. The work you're doing right now benefits you right now and may benefit generations to come, but it will not benefit you forever. At one point, it will have no regard for your life. For instance, we live in an era where we are living in the benefit of others' work. Benjamin Franklin, okay? Benjamin Franklin. Raise your hand if you've had any exposure or have received benefit from a lightning rod. These are all Benjamin Franklin's things. Bifocals. Okay. Odometers. Public libraries. Okay. The flexible urinary catheter. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. So it's all Ben Franklin. It's all Ben Franklin. Okay. But at no point did he make a dime of royalties off you. He poured his life into all of these things that all of us are going, yeah, we did that. And to what end for Benjamin Franklin? Nothing. He's receiving no reward for that work. Michelangelo is not receiving residuals on the Sistine Chapel. Great work. Didn't matter in the long run for him. If Elon Musk gets to Mars, it won't matter to him in 50 years. The earth abides forever. It's going nowhere. But humanity, individuals, have an expiration date. And unless it regenerates itself from generation to generation, it's gone. And the first generation to fail to procreate brings the entire experiment to an end. That's how fragile we are. What we do doesn't matter to us when we're gone. And if we don't replicate, it doesn't matter to anybody. The mountains, they're going to exist. And they'll exist for thousands of years. That frustration about what am I doing? Does it matter? Will it matter in the long run? Is gripping some of you. You're starting to feel those first waves of mortality. Maybe somebody near you who you would have considered a peer passed away. And when that happened, you said what all of us said the first time it happened. They were young. Because we feel like we are. Or maybe you're still relatively young, but you're looking at the path that is prescribed you, that your parents went down, and it wasn't as rewarding for them as they had hoped. And you were told, if you work hard, it'll pay off. And it can, but you're wise enough at this point to have watched people who worked hard who didn't have much to show for it. And the preacher in Ecclesiastes is feeling those things of, I've put my hands to things, and I'm realizing this is not as important or as eternal as I had hoped it would be. When you leave a job that you have been at for 30 years, on a Friday, you wake up Monday and you think about it. You know what they think about? Who's going to replace you? Who's next? It's the nature of work. So in Ecclesiastes, the preacher looks at the nature of his work and he's going, I don't know that this matters long term to anybody. And he also decides that if anybody can get to the bottom of this, I can. If anybody can sort this out, I've got all of these resources at my disposal. We are not the same. I have resources, I've got money, I've got wealth, I'm wise. I'm going to commit my life to figure this out. And in verses 12 to 13, he says, I, the preacher, was the king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I set my heart to seek out, to search out by wisdom concerning all that is done under heaven, this burdensome task that God has given to the sons of men, by which they may be exercised. Now, in all due respect, it sounds a little melodramatic, doesn't it? A little melodramatic, this burdensome task that God has given to men. What is the burdensome task he's talking about? The burdensome task that he's referring to is life. He is saying that God has deliberately built a system involving work, time, relationships, love, fear, envy, accomplishment, failure, and he's laid it all out before us, and we all have to walk it out, and he's made it meaningless apart from a relationship with him. And the writer of Ecclesiastes says, this is a job. But our struggle is not with the meaninglessness of life, it's with our lack of connection to him. It's our idea that our circumstances would be different. If our circumstances would be different, that somehow our heart would be different. That if we achieved more, we'd be satisfied. No, if your circumstances were different, your heart would just be sedated for a while. And ultimately, it would go back to that idea of, does this mean anything? The preacher in Ecclesiastes, his heart is starting to wake up. And he goes on in verses 16 to 18, and he says, I communed with my heart, saying, look, I have attained greatness, and I have gained more wisdom than all who were before me in Jerusalem. My heart has understood great wisdom and knowledge, and I set my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceive that this is also grasping for the wind, for in as much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. And he closes out chapter 1, and he lays out the big problem. And this is the big problem of life. Even with all that he has achieved and all he's been blessed with, he's not satisfied. Some of you are living the life you dreamed about at 20, and you're kind of like, not what I thought it was going to be. I thought it would be more fulfilling. I thought I'd be more excited about life. I thought I would look around and go, this is the good life. And you've achieved it, and it isn't. Even with all that he's achieved and all that he's been blessed with, he's not satisfied. Most of us would identify. Maybe things aren't perfect, but we've seen enough of this world to know that others seem to have it better than we do. We might not be the king of Israel, might not be the wisest person in the world. We might look around, though, and admit there are people that we would trade places with, and we think if we traded places with them that maybe things would be better. Even though we have plenty, we lay our head in the pillow, and it's not enough. Not only is it not enough, we've matured ourselves to know that if we get more stuff, it still won't solve the problem. We're running out of solutions here. So for the next 10 chapters, the writer of Ecclesiastes experiments. In some ways, he's not unlike the prodigal son. He goes off and he tries different things, except he's a little more honest about it, and he keeps really good records. He goes out and he tries to make life work, and he keeps a diary because he realizes, I'm a leader here. If I crack this nut, this will be beautiful, and this will be helpful to all of humanity to discover what they can do to achieve fulfillment. And he tries everything he can do to make sense of life. He is determined to try and calm the ache of his heart that lives with that idea of dissatisfaction, that same ache that only can be met by God. And he tries everything he can think of, and he records the thought process and the activity and the realization that, yeah, that's not working either. He literally writes a book of Ecclesiastes about what does not work. And the first thing that does not work is pleasure. He says, I tried pleasure. You would have thought it would have worked, and it didn't. Chapter 2, verse 3, he says, I searched in my heart for how to gratify my flesh with wine, while guiding my heart with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, that I might see what was good for the sons of men to do under heaven all the days of their lives. So he determines, leave the verse up for a second, he determines, in the name of research, to go on a bender. He's like, I'm just going to see, how much wine it takes to make life better. Tells the bartender, pour me another. Bartender says, are you sure? He says, yes, in the name of research. I'm searching my heart on how to gratify the flesh with wine. But in reality, he's not limiting all of this just to wine. He's talking about pleasure. Because in addition to drinking, he tells us he researches pleasure in every other avenue that he can find it. Verses 4 to 7. I told you we'd speed up. Some of you, when I was in verse 1 at a crawl, you were very concerned. I saw it on your faces, but we're moving more quickly. Verses 4 to 7, I made my works great. I built myself houses. I planted myself vineyards. I made myself gardens and orchards, and I planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made myself water pools with which to water the growing trees of the grove. I acquired male and female servants. I had servants born in my house. I was at this so long. I had 2 generations of servants. Yet I had greater possessions of herds and flocks than all who were in Jerusalem before me. In other words, I lived the great dream of hedonism, of living for pleasure, believing that enjoyment of the good life would bring peace to my heart. And he tells us he was good at it. Verse 9, he said, I became so great and excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem, and my wisdom remained with me. Isn't it interesting that the king, the wisest man who ever lived, the one that had every advantage that you and I don't, is still measuring his success in comparison to others? He's given his life to this, and he's still saying, I had it better than they did. Because at some level, that is what the pursuit of pleasure is about. It's about manipulating circumstances in your realm until you can identify someone who has it a little worse off than you do so that you can feel better about your own life. That's how you feel blessed, by finding somebody else who's not. That's why we say things like, well, it always could be worse. As if it were worse, you wouldn't want that life. You're glad that they have that life and you have this life. Because if you can make your life a little better than theirs, you're winning the game. Reminded of a story. A poor man walks down the street. He's so poor, he's got no place to sleep. He's got no food. Doesn't even have shoes. And as he's walking down the street, he comes upon a beggar. The beggar is sitting there asking people for coins, and he's got stumps at his knees. And the first man looks at him and says, what happened? Were you born this way? He goes, oh, no. He said, I was exhausted, I was drunk, I fell asleep on the railroad tracks, and the train hit me, and I lost both my legs. And the other man looked at him and said, do you know what happened to your shoes? It was a joke. Thank you. As if somewhere, boy, that was... Don't tell this story again. Okay. My point is the idea that we could find something, if I'm a little better off than that guy, life is good. That's how he compares himself to others. And Ecclesiastes says, I got shoes. I got everything that everybody else doesn't have, and I still found myself lacking. Ecclesiastes 2:11. Whatever I desired, my eyes desired, I didn't keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure. For my heart rejoiced in all my labor. And all of this reward was, he said, I worked hard, and everything I wanted, I could have. Most of us do not have that experience. I chuckle when people talk about, well, I'm on a fixed income. You and everybody else. Very few people have unlimited income. That's kind of a rare gig. Because we all have a fixed income of some sort, we have to make choices, right? Like, we can't have everything our eyes desire. So we make adjustments and we make settlements. I've recently picked up an old man hobby, my first old man hobby, first of many, is I'm now interested in watches. Is that not the oldest person thing you can think of? And so I'm interested in watches, and I've found that the really good ones are very expensive. It's like there's a corollary. The more expensive they get, the better they get. And so I've got a kind of a self-limit. I've got a couple of nice watches that have been given to me, but the ones, if I buy one, my rule is it can't cost more than a tank of gas, which has gotten to be more expensive lately, but still, like, I've got a lot like this. This is a cheap Chinese copy of what was originally a cheap Japanese watch, and so, but they're fun to me. So, but I look around, I can't possibly have all the ones that I want. So I make choices. I have to make decisions. Solomon said, bring on the Rolex. No, there's nothing in his mind that he is envisioning that he can't have. Anything is his that he wants. Nothing he had to deny of himself. Yet we lean in, and what does he learn here? In verse 11, I looked on all the works of my hands that had done, and on the labor in which I had toiled, and indeed it was all vanity. It was grasping for the wind. There was no profit under the sun. I could have anything I wanted, and it still went up in smoke. Everything he achieved that gave him real pleasure, it was just gone in light of the dissatisfaction that he felt. Dissatisfaction in life is not removed by pleasure. Some of you are pursuing pleasure because you think when you achieve pleasure, the dissatisfaction will go away. No, you are just dissatisfied in a more pleasant place. And you're still dissatisfied. You might feel a little better for a little while, but the ache continues as you struggle in comparison to others. And even if you didn't, you're always settling for a lesser pleasure than is available. It isn't that pleasure isn't enjoyable, it's that there is a greater pleasure that we were created for. C.S. Lewis, who wrote the fantasy books, Chronicles of Narnia, has a vastly larger library than most people would realize. He wrote a lot. He wrote a book called The Problem of Pain when he processed the death of his wife. Another one of his important works is called The Weight of Glory, where he emphasizes how God looks at humanity, and he actually says, you have never met a mere mortal. He's talking about us meeting other human beings. You've never met anybody that's not going to live forever in some realm. But in referencing the value of man in the eyes of God, he talks about how we are not satisfied when we think we should be, and why. And he says this, we are half-hearted creatures, fooling around with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us. Like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in the slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. The failure to be satisfied by the pleasure that we expect is not because it's not good enough, it's that the ache in our heart is greater than the pleasure that the world offers. You were made for more than houses and boats and trips and watches, and there's nothing wrong with any of those things. They are just wholly inadequate to answer the ache of your heart. And Solomon, who was not limited by finances like we are, said, even with unlimited finances, I could not get myself into a place of pleasure that addressed the ache of my heart. We are thirsty for something that nothing we can achieve can satisfy. I want to ask if the worship team would come back for a second. The only satisfaction that you will find anywhere is satisfaction with the one that meets every expectation you have. King David was just beginning to figure this out. In Psalm 16, verse 11, when he said, "You show me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures evermore." The things that his son Solomon wrote about in the way of pleasure, his father had a bit of insight to, and if he'd have listened to his dad, he'd have realized there was no way that the pleasures of earth were going to satisfy him. David found it easier to find peace in his heart on the backside of the wilderness, playing his instrument to sheep beneath the stars of the sky, worshiping his God, than he did with all the trappings of the palace, where he struggled with faithfulness. Jesus goes further than that to make it how clear, satisfying, fulfilling he can be. When he said in John 4:13 and 14, "Whoever drinks of this water will thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst. But the water I give him will come in a fountain of water springing up with everlasting life." I want to ask you to stand with me for a moment. And I just want to address the ache of your dissatisfaction. Some of you have been afraid to even face it because it's embarrassing. How can I be dissatisfied? I apparently have life figured out. I'm doing okay. Except that you know that you're not. And it's not because you're a bad person. It's not because you're not doing your best. It's because you are an eternal being that was created to receive pleasure from a walk with the Lord. And you're looking for it all these other places. I just want to pray for a moment for those who are disappointed. Not because you've done something wrong, because you felt like you did everything right, and it's just not enough. Father, I ask right now that as we move into worship, that the dissatisfaction in our hearts with what we've accomplished, or the at odds we are with life because it didn't turn out the way we thought it would turn out. All of the things that we thought would give us pleasure, and now they're as close as we're going to get, and it's still not enough. We turn our hearts, we recalibrate, and we look to you to fill that space of need in our hearts right now. I just want to ask you, if you're struggling with dissatisfaction at some level, and things haven't turned out the way you thought they would, and you need him to speak with you, just lift your hand right now. We want to pray where you are, all along the back over here. This is, I say it, this is a sandwich you have not ordered that you've got in front of you. Just keep your hands up for just a second. If you're standing near someone in that case, we encourage you to gather around them and pray for them. Just take a look around. Is anybody near you? Let's gather around them and pray for them as we worship. Father, right now I ask that you would minister with that sense of, this is not turning out the way I thought it would. Some folks here in the back as well. Lord, meet needs.
Jesus is mine. He's been my fourth man in the fire, time after time. Born of His Spirit, washed in His blood, and what He did for me on Calvary is more than enough. And I trust in God, my Savior, the one who will never fail. He will never fail. Perfect submission, all is at rest. I know the author of tomorrow has ordered my steps. So this is my story. This is my song, praising my risen King and Savior all the day long. And I trust in God, my Savior, the one who will never fail. He will never fail. Yes, I trust in God, my Savior, the one who will never fail. He will never fail.
Father, we look to you in those areas where pleasure and achievement have failed us. We refuse to settle for less than we were created for. And I ask right now for those with heavy hearts because of disappointment, that they would lean in to the message of the preacher of Ecclesiastes. They would understand that only in you is fullness of joy. Pray a blessing on us as we go. Father, for those that are traveling, not with us today, you would draw near to them. We would be fulfilled, realize who we are in light of you.